Why do we suffer? Hello, my friend. If you are on this channel, if you're watching this video, if you are on a spiritual path, or if you are just a human being, likely you ask yourself the same question. Why do I suffer? Why do we suffer? Today we will dive deep into how our suffering comes about. We will learn about the human experience, and by understanding that, we will be able to step onto the path of meditation, the path of freeing ourselves from suffering. You will see that actually the process is not that complicated. Of course, it's not simple, and I want to put a small disclaimer or a big disclaimer here that if you suffer from mental like depression or something, reaching out for help, reaching out to other is always a good idea, and it's always there, always allowed. Remember, you never alone. But let's jump into it. I prepared something special for you, a slideshow slash whiteboard session. So without further ado, the transition. We're gonna start with the Four Noble Truths said by Buddha. And let's start with the first noble truth, which is the truth of suffering. Suffering exists. That's part of being a human, or that's part of the human condition. The first truth is the suffering exists. The second truth is that there is a cause of suffering, and the second truth talks about the suffering. That's what we're going to discover today. The third truth is that there is an end to suffering. It's possible to free ourselves from suffering. And the fourth truth is that the path towards freeing ourselves from suffering, and the path is meditation. The path is basically becoming aware of the process and see the totality of how our suffering comes about. By that, you can kind of like Neo from the Matrix. It's a really cheesy analogy, but it works. Neo from the Matrix, you're able to see how the Matrix works, and because of that, you're able to free yourself. It's not an accident that it resonated so much with people. All right. I would like to share two quotes with you from Rupert Spira. If you haven't come across his YouTube channel, I recommend to check it out. He is a really great spiritual teacher. What he says, look at this. Happiness is simply to allow everything to be exactly as it is from moment to moment. Let's that sink in. Happiness is simply to allow everything to be exactly as it is from moment to moment. Another way of saying this is to be okay with what is. Or another way to saying this is to say yes to the present moment. That's what freeing ourselves from suffering is. As I said, it's not complicated. It's really simple, and that's gonna be one of the pitfalls, but we're gonna talk about that a little bit later. The other quote is this: to invest one's identity and security in something that appears, moves, changes, and disappears is the cause of unhappiness. So this is the second truth. What's the cause? The cause of unhappiness, the cause of suffering is this: to invest one's identity and security into something that appears, moves, changes, and disappears is the cause of unhappiness. Another way of saying this is the simple way to be truly happy is to be in the absence of unhappiness. In other words, if we experience the absence of unhappiness, we fall into our true nature. We can say our innately whole nature, which is happiness. All right. I'm gonna have a really sweet analogy for this. So keep in mind for later. The next thing I want to share with you is the pitfalls that can get between us and experiencing freedom, experiencing this happiness. I could just write here happiness, because it's better to keep things grounded. Or I could say experiencing peace, experiencing love. We could I'm saying other words so you have a better understanding. So one of the first pitfall is having a non-experiential understanding, having a heady knowledge about things. So this is when maybe when you or when people, if someone learns a lot, maybe you listened a lot of Eckhart Tolle and you just know what's the answer to what Eckhart's answer would be for anything. I'm awareness, just be present. Like, you know all of these, but you cannot apply. You still angry, you still upset, you still experience these things and you don't know what to do with it. Okay, I'm awareness, just be present. But like, screw you. Screw you, right? Because there are levels, and what we do here, we first have a non-experiential understanding, the first level of knowledge. We just have a knowledge in our mind, but we don't have an experiential knowledge. It's the same if you read about mountain climbing or if you actually go and learn and climb the mountains. Those are two completely different experiencing. When you climb the mountain, you have all sort of whole body experience. You have the smell, the touch, the kinesthetics. You ingrained, you embodied that knowledge, and that's the real difference between just knowing the knowledge what it should be, or sitting down, actually practicing, actually meditating, and experiencing freedom, experiencing the happiness, experiencing the Advaita, these things. Okay, so the first one is not practicing. Another way I could write this: not practicing. The second one is overcomplicating. Now, as I said, this is not complicated, this is simple. How could it be complicated? How could it be complicated if what we coming back to is our innate nature? If what we coming back to is what's already there, what's innate, what's the core of everything is simple, is really simple. A core of everything is really simple. How could it be complicated? But the problem is when we think, even, we would experience in a meditation this kind of freedom or happiness, but we retract ourselves because we say, it cannot be it. It cannot be it because this cannot be it. This is just too simple. Just letting everything go. Just letting everything go. Just being okay with what is. Cannot be it. There must be something more complicated than this. It cannot be just to be okay with what is. There has to be something more complicated, and because of that, people don't experience it. You just have to let go. You just have to be okay with what is. If you overcomplicate, you're not gonna allow yourself to experience it. So that's the second pitfall. The third pitfall is over glorifying. I remember when I was 15, 16, I loved reading these small books about Buddhist saints and how they became enlightened, and I was so inspired and wished that someday I could enlighten as well. It was like wishing if someday I could be a rock star, or if someday I could be rich, or if someday I could be enlightened. And very often we search for this glorified enlightenment experience, and because of that, actually a small experience of love and peace and happiness, we slip away from those. We don't acknowledge those. I believe that's where it has to start. We don't have to cling to this glorifying experience, and that's basically another way of just complication. It's just letting go. And for many people, that's exactly that hold themselves back exactly from experiencing peace and love and happiness, right? And even these, when I'm saying these words, those are not the big things. Those are actually often quite subtle, often so subtle that we tend to not appreciate them. But when you do appreciate these subtle things, that's when you actually experiencing something that we talk about here. The fourth pitfall. The fourth pitfall is deluding ourselves. This is what I call spiritual stupidity, and I had my fair share of it when I went once back then to an Osho fest. I was big into Osho back then, and I was doing this dynamic meditation. If you haven't heard about it, it's about basically go crazy on purpose, and the idea is that you put out, you express anything that in you. Now in my expression, I threw myself down to the ground and started banging my head into the marble floor because, I imagined I'm going all out and I'm doing really well. So after the meditation, we stood up and nice music, and I'm standing and like, I did really well. I thought my third eye is opening. And after that, as we were going out to the door, my brother says, "Hey, Viktor, like, what's up with your forehead? You're bleeding." I really opened my third eye, but not the way I really wished. That was spiritual stupidity. So if you delude yourself, if you lose your ground from reality, well, you simply going to the wrong direction. And the fourth is that we are addicted. We are addicted, all of us, to something. And freedom from suffering is really the freedom of the biggest addiction of every human being, which is the addiction to our own opinion about the world. Our own opinion about the world. Our own judgment about things, how things should be, how things shouldn't be, and what things are good and what things are bad. Now, of course, it's important that we create opinions about the world, and this is basically our ego, our psychology that creates these judgments. But those are different levels of operating, and freedom is really not. It's not like you don't do these things. It's not like you stop being human, stop judging, stop being in the dual world, but it's more like you're going to be aware of the dual world, and by that you will be able to step out of it. Okay, so these were the pitfalls we were talking about. What how suffering, or what suffering is, a little bit how suffering comes about, how you free yourself. Next, let's talk about an analogy for you to really understand the process of what is this. So we talked about let's say that okay. So the thing is that you, as a person, you experience things. You experience things in the world, perceptions, you experience your thoughts, your feelings, and your sensations. But are those things, ask yourself, are those things always there? Or do they change? Are any of these things there all the time? Or are those come, stay, and go? If you remember back to the quote, to invest one's identity security in something that appears, moves, changes, disappears is the cause of unhappiness. So coming back to our analogy, all of these, if these change and we invest our identity to these, are we become unhappy by the reason of this identification? Experiencing these things is not a problem, but identifying ourselves. But let's just real quick jump into another thing, and we're gonna jump back to this. So let me tell a quick story. Once I went a couple of times, but when I once went to a vipassana meditation, that's a retreat. That's a retreat where I went there for 10 days. We didn't speak. We didn't look into each other's eyes. We were completely like looking inside and in isolation. We lived basically as monks for 10 days. We lived as monks. And on the first and second day, it was pretty much an intro into this whole thing. And on the third day, I went out and saw the schedule and saw the first 2 days we were meditating 1 hour. And the third day, it was 4 hours of meditation in one sit. And my knees were aching, my back was killing me, and I thought I'm a hero to be able to sit through 1 hour. And when I saw the 4 hours, I sank. Like, I did not believe how dare they expecting me sitting and meditating 4 hours. But that was the breakthrough, because as I was sitting there, after 45 minutes, my back started to hurt. And I started to play a game in my head. It's like, how the hell I'm gonna be able to sit through the four hours and try to convince myself to be able to sit. But of course, what we did there is we did a vow of determination that we're gonna sit there, as Buddha took a vow of determination when he enlightened. So what I had there is basically I had a sensation, I had an experience, I had something in my body which I interpreted as pain. Okay, we will use this pain to understand a little bit this process. So there were things like my backbones, my muscles and my structure, because of a certain sitting, created some sort of not even this, it's some sort of sensations. And that was created, we kind of reverse engineer it here, that was created with certain type of things, certain things that happened outside. Okay, happened, right? So you're gonna understand soon, just bear with me. So what happened is that because I was sitting, like, that's the fact, I was sitting. It wasn't good, it wasn't bad, I was just sitting, right? I was sitting. Then, because the sitting, I felt a sensation. Because I was sitting long, I felt a sensation. Not good, not bad, it's just a sensation, pressure and such in the back, tingling, stretching, and so on. Now here comes something interesting. I had an interpretation of that perception, which is I said that this is bad. This is really, really bad. I'm gonna be crippled. I'm this cannot stay like this. And my experience was that because of that, I'm in pain, right? And what I did then, I ruminated on this. So I had an interpretation of this story of me. What does this story mean? So I interpret that, and I go through again what's that experience, and I kind of like roll this over and over and over again. And the big revelation was in the Vipassana is that we thought that we have a choice here. We have a choice here. This is the link. This is the link between the two, where we can do. For someone who enjoys pain, this sensation is actually good, right? And that person gonna have I'm in pleasure, right? And gonna have a different story about it, right? Or someone who is who can see this whole process and meditated and so on, gonna be like neutral, gonna just be aware of it, and gonna say it's gonna say just it is what it is, right? It is what it is, and not gonna have a story about it really, just it is what it is. That's another simple way of saying the how you can free yourself from suffering. So you see, this is how suffering comes about. So this is how suffering, or not necessarily suffering, this is our experience, and we choose if we interpret as bad, good. This is the dual nature. This is what they talk about, the duality, right? Or you can just see it for what it is, and that's like Advaita, or there are many names. Okay, so let's go back to this, the clouds. So by realizing this, you realize that you have a choice. By realizing this, what you do is you, through meditation, you realize that all of these are perception, thoughts, feelings, and sensations go, stay, and pass. None of them none of them create who we are. The only thing that's always there, the only thing that we can say that's let's write I am, the only thing that really is me is the awareness that bear with me, the awareness that looks at it. So we are none of these things. All of these clouds come and stay and go, and we are just able to not be reactive, just be able to be aware, just look at them. And that's really how you free yourself from suffering, is not being caught up, not invest your identity and security in things that appear, move, change, and disappear. Things like your your experience. Okay. And yeah, so we can experience all of these different states and emotions. And, you know, sometimes we do feel happy, sometimes we feel neutral, sad, angry, but you can look at these and be aware of all of these and not be reactive to these. Now, this doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you will be passive. This is not passivity. This is actually the total engagement with what is. You can, instead of being dragged by these circumstances, you will be able to make your own choice. So this is the explanation how suffering comes about, and the path, I would say an introduction or a run through of how suffering comes about and how to free ourselves. Check out the other videos because I talk more about these topics: how to live more happily, how to be more fulfilled, how to gain self-awareness, and how to be better with others, how to make a difference in this world. So if you gained any value out of this video, share it with others. Give me a feedback, hit a like or a dislike. Subscribe and hit the notification bell button, all of those sweet things, and jump onto the next video. We can grow together, and remember, you are innately whole. See you in the next video.